Thanks, Danny. Hi, everyone. My name is Anton Gostip. I lead the product management at Veeam, and I'm here to give you a sneak peek of what's coming in version 11 of our platform. Primarily, I'm going to be talking about features of Veeam Availability Suite version 11. Every demo that you're going to see today is live code of the current build. So we are pretty close to beta that we expect to release this summer. And of course, we're going to welcome our partners and prospects to join it as usually as we do the private betas. But let's jump straight in. And today, again, it's a sneak peek. Version 11 is a huge release. As usually with Veeam, all major releases are huge. But today, we're going to be talking about 3 areas. The first one is continuous data protection. Second one, our enhancements in object storage integration. Finally, major enhancements around instant recovery technology. All right, let's jump right in. So first, Veeam CDP. What is Veeam CDP? It's actually shortened from Veeam Continuous Data Protection. It's our proprietary technology to provide near continuous, essentially, data protection for your most critical VMs. So if you use VMware vSphere, and some of the VMs are probably more important than other, and you need to recover them very fast if they go down and there's minimal data loss, that's exactly what Veeam enables, right? Veeam CDP allows you to recover instantly with minimal data loss, down to seconds, and while providing the normal SLAs, meaning it's a replica that's running from production storage, right? What are the benefits of Veeam CDP? Well, the first one, and one of the biggest, is no workload dependency. So we literally don't care what operating system or what application is running in VMs that you're protecting. We actually have a great demo later that shows this. Then there is no hardware dependency, so you don't have to match the hardware between your primary site and disaster recovery site. It can be any to any. And finally, there is no extra costs. The Veeam CDP is included in the Veeam Universal license, and if you use socket licenses, that's Enterprise Plus edition. So we're really democratizing the DR by introducing this capability and no extra costs, right? Finally, last but not least, I like to say it's not a glassware, right? We took quite some time to polish it, but now we believe it's ready and will provide you the reliability and resiliency that you come to expect from our company. So where does it fit? Because we have so many technologies today in Veeam, so many recovery technologies, and many of them are instant, right? So where does this Veeam CDP fits? I created this table to clarify it, right? Very simple, like stoplight mode type of table, right? So let's talk about the first one. Restore from image level backup, most obvious, most straightforward, right? Of course, it takes lots of time. If it's a very large VM, terabytes in size, then it takes hours easily, right? That's why RTO is red. RPO is yellow because, yeah, you can back up pretty often. I know some customers backing up every hour, every 15 minutes, it works, but it still can go down to seconds. SLA is obviously yellow because you're running from production storage once you restore it, and there is no IO constraints there, right? A slight twist to this is when you restore from transaction log backups. So you may restore image level backup and then restore transaction logs for your database, right? RTO is still in red, right? Because it takes a lot of time. Even if you don't restore VM itself, the database restore, if a database is very large, can take a while, right? So RTO is still in red, takes time to restore. RPO is green because thanks to transaction log backup, we can minimize data loss to seconds. And again, you're restoring to primary storage, so SLA is in green. Now, everyone's favorite instant restore from image level backup, right? RTO is green because it's instant, obviously, right? RPO is the same. RPO is really defined by the backup, so it's still in yellow. And now I put SLA in yellow because you're no longer running from production storage, you're running from backup repository. So obviously, the SLA from IO perspective is lower than from production storage. Now, file over to classic replica. Again, RTO is in green because it's very fast. We just power on the replica VM. RPO, again, is defined by the classic way of doing backup with VMware snapshots. Again, the customers backing up, replicating every 15 minutes. Still, you can go down to seconds. SLA is always in green for replicas because it's primary storage. And finally, Veeam CDP, all green, right? You recover instantly because it's replica. You recover up to the latest point in time, so there's minimal data loss in seconds, and you're still running from production storage. Everything green, of course, you still have to pay for it, and that's the requirement. You're paying that with the bandwidth required to stream the IO almost near continuously, and proxy resources, because all the IO that happens, you basically have to pump through the proxies and send them to the offsite and so on. So that's how it fits into the current technology set of Veeam. And finally, some highlights about the technology benefits of Veeam CDP, right? So first, it's asynchronous replication. So it means there is no physical distance limit that comes from synchronous replication provided by storage-based replication. The bandwidth requirements are also much lower than with synchronous replication, or for that matter, actually with regular replica, right? Because when you try to perform regular replica with very low RPOs, CDP will provide lower bandwidth requirements because we'll track the IO not on a larger block level, but on actual IO level. We'll consolidate IO. So if the same block within that short period of monitoring is overwritten multiple times, we'll only send the latest state, contrary to synchronous replication that sends every IO as it happens, right? Of course, we do traffic compression, and we have native support for unreliable links, right? So in case the link breaks for a short period of time, you don't have to resync everything from the start. We provide flexible deployment models, so the Veeam CDP proxies can be virtual in a VM running on your source and target hosts, or you can actually have a dedicated physical CDP proxies if it's a large environment and you really want to take off the load, additional processing load that's caused by CDP proxies from your vSphere hosts, not to impact your production workloads, right? Then you can have the dedicated physical CDP proxy connected directly into ESXi hosts and pulling the data like that. Finally, it's policy-based, so much easier to set up. You don't create jobs, right? You just define the policy, your RPO, the desired RPO, and we'll take care of it, make sure it's met, right? And finally, to simplify the deployment, because the technology is very demanding in terms of bandwidth and CPU resources of the proxy, we actually provide built-in deployment calculator that analyzes the historical IO for VMs you selected to be a part of policy, right? And then it will actually tell you how much bandwidth you do need to perform CDP protection at the specified RPO that you need, right? And whether your CDP proxy resources are adequate, right? So it makes it much easier to plan these CDP deployments, all right? So that's really briefly what our Veeam CDP technology is about, but let me now pass to Michael to actually demo it for you. Michael?
Thanks, Anton. Let's see how easy it is to get Veeam CDP up and running in Veeam Backup and Replication version 11. Okay, let's start by creating a CDP policy from scratch. So we give it a name, and then we've got to choose the workloads that we wish to protect. So we can do this with virtual machines and just click them single, or we can use VM folders, or we can use data stores. In this instance, I'm going to use vSphere tags. So here I've got a tag called Tier 1, extremely important apps. Give it a next. Then we're going to choose where we're going to send those workloads as part of this CDP policy. And I've got a vSAN cluster created. Now we're using vSAN, but we're completely agnostic to wherever that goes, whether it's VMFS or whether it's NFS or vVols. Then we need to choose our source and target proxies. And then we've got this test, which is going to check whether the CDP infrastructure, those proxies that we have, is capable of being able to deal with the RPOs that we require. Then we define our RPOs in seconds and minutes. Then we define how long do we keep those replication points for, and then how long do we keep those longer term retention for. Then we've got application aware processing if you wish, and let's get that started. So that policy should appear here any second. And then let's take a look at our vSphere environment. So over on the left-hand side, we have our production cluster. And over on the right, we have our disaster recovery site. And already you can see that the policy's created that demo VM replica. Then we look at the cluster level, and you can see that that's where the IO filter is installed, and you can see that that VM is using that filter. Then we get to the special demo VM. And as you'll see by the login screen, it may look familiar. And this is because Veeam CDP is not platform dependent. And it's also a very small footprint. So as you can see on the desktop, I have nothing on there at the moment. And I really just want to simulate a very small test text document to just show how quick we can get that data over to that secondary site and not worry about what that virtual machine, what that operating system is. So let's quickly create a simple text document and save that to the desktop. And we're not condoning using Windows NT at all at this point. Let's simulate a failover now by pulling the power on that VM, and then let's head back into Veeam Backup and Replication. So now we need to concentrate on the failover option that we have to get that machine back up and running over in that disaster recovery. So if we right click, failover now, we then get to choose the restore point. And because we set that RPO to 15 seconds, we now have a slider which allows us to go back those 15 seconds at each individual point. So we can really be granular on what that looks like. Hit next, give it a reason, and that will start that process off. So we have a couple of seconds here whilst the restore session is becoming configured. So let's jump over into vSphere on that disaster recovery site. And side by side, we're going to see how we're going to stop that replication engine because there's nothing to grab because that production site is off. And we're going to see that demo VM underscore replica start to be powered up. So you can see now that the demo VM underscore replica is now powered up. Our faithful Windows NT machine should be powering on and starting that boot process. If we jump into there, there's the famous login screen. Let's give it a Control-Alt-Delete login. If you've ever tried using this without a mouse or VMware tools, then that's a little project that you can attempt yourselves. It's pretty tricky. So there you go. You see it on the desktop. We've got our Veeam On text file. We now have to think about our long-term options. Do we need to permanently fail over to the DR site as is now? Do we want to undo failover, or do we want to fail back to production? Now I want to fail back to production. So that means all of the changes that we've made since that since that first failover will now be replicated back to the original VM. We next have some options around scheduling or switching back over to that production site. So whether it's automatic, scheduled, or manual, we can choose. We have a bit more granularity on when we do that, and as well as powering on that VM when it's replicated over to that production site. So this is going to run through and it's going to prepare that original VM, and then we've failed back successfully all of the changes since that initial failure scenario. Before we go back to Anton, there's two things I'd like you to remember. One is how simple it was to get things up and running. And secondly, it's all in one product. Back to you, Anton.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Excellent demo. So that's what we just saw was Veeam CDP. Again, first feature